This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Welcome back to my chat with ChangeMaker Kate Bennett, the Administrator of the Boston Housing Authority. Kate currently oversees public housing and housing choice voucher programs that provide affordable housing for over 50,000 people, both in and around the city of Boston. Kate, you've put an emphasis on capital upgrades, housing choice, access to housing, and you've invested more than $2 billion in redevelopment. What does that translate into for you and your communities?
I'm very proud of the redevelopment work that BHA has done over the years. I think we've been a leader in that regard, especially in redeveloping for existing communities and not using redevelopment as a tool to sort of move public housing folks out, which, unfortunately in some areas of the nation that has been a theme. I think the redevelopments give an opportunity to sort of rethink and revision what the community can be. And the redevelopments often come with partners and resources that can not only substantially upgrade the housing standard and create housing that's attractive and healthy and place that people are proud to live in, and that it doesn't look like a super block of conventional public housing, but looks like other housing in the neighborhood. But it's also an opportunity to upgrade the level of services and mobility that families can experience. And so we're frequently able to access job training programs and computer training programs and education programs and other things through these efforts that have really given people new opportunities. And we've also been able to much better integrate some of these sites into the broader neighborhoods so that they're not isolated within a broader community, and that there's not a stigma there, and in fact that the site is seen as an asset to the neighborhood. I think it's safe to say that that's we've been successful at that where we've done these kinds of revitalizations. Mobility you raised. I think mobility is just is hugely important, and giving families the ability to gain skills, to pursue their dreams, whatever those dreams may be, for kids to have access to strong education programs and be able to be prepared to apply to college and go to college or not, but have, another track that's viable and that doesn't leave them just sort of taking over their parents' unit, which, we work very hard to give the younger generation an opportunity to not take over their parents' unit if they so choose. And so we also have a lot of mobility programs active in our leased housing program, which is, another, kind of core program of ours, is that we administer about 15,000 private housing vouchers, which go out into the private market of Boston. They're not buildings that we own and manage, but we provide a subsidy to the residents that are living in them, or sometimes a subsidy to the units in the building. And so we've worked very hard on that side of the house to work with families to go where they want to go and not just move to neighborhoods where traditionally vouchers have been accepted, and to kind of break ground into other neighborhoods of Boston and beyond Boston, so that families really have choice of where they want to go and where they can live. And they're not going to face discrimination, which is frankly rampant when it comes to vouchers, where they're not going to face the prospect of no landlords being familiar with or willing to rent to voucher families. And so we do a lot of work on that side of the house as well.
You mentioned those 15,000 vouchers. I'm sure Boston Housing Authority, you guys, while you house city residents, maybe it's 9 or 10% of your overall city. I do suspect that's not even close to meeting the true need. What do you think, if you're going to say, is it that you need to I guess I'm trying to figure out here, is it more vouchers that you need? Is it more development money to build new units? Preservation. Is it a combination of all three of those things, or can you specifically say, what is it that you guys need as a housing authority to be able to really help provide housing? Because Boston is a very expensive city, so I'm sure that there's this large gap here of people needing affordable housing.
Yeah, I think you're focusing in on a complex set of dynamics. We have over 50,000 families on our waiting lists combined between public housing and leased housing. And so the need is just tremendous. As much as we are, I think, ranked first in the nation for creation of affordable housing, we need more. We need more of it, and we need new units, and we need more vouchers. But we also need our surrounding communities within the state to step up and create more as well. I don't think Boston can solve what is really a regional problem in terms of the affordable housing shortage. I think we are doing an amazing job, but the need far outweighs the actual creation of new opportunities within the city still. They're real needs, and most of the families that we house at this point are formerly homeless, and so they don't just need housing, they need many other services as well. And then, you raise the housing market in Boston. That means that we have less turnover than we used to. We used to have more people that could make that leap from a public housing unit and paying 30% of their income for rent to a market unit. And we have less and less of those. So our turnover is shrinking, which means that we're housing fewer of those families off the waiting list as we go forward, and that, there's just this sort of growing gap between the haves and the have-nots in the city. And I think, our former mayor was keenly focused on that. I think our new mayor will be laser focused on that. But I really think that until we can get some assistance from surrounding communities in the state, that, we're not going to make real headway here.
Yeah, so what's the average rent in Boston? Is it $2,500 or $3,000 for a 2-bedroom?
I'm not sure. I think I recently heard over $2,000 for a 1-bedroom, and our residents average the ability to pay about $300 a month. Their earnings are typically about $15,000 per household per year. Mm-hmm. So even if you drastically improve their income, it's a long way from being able to afford a market rent in the city.
Right. It's like there's a dynamic here. Even if their earnings are $15,000 a year, but even if their earnings were like the average income, somewhere between 65 or 70,
yeah,
$2,000 to $3,000 in rent is an incredible rent burden. And so, you've got this dynamic here where, like you mentioned, there's less turnover, housing fewer people, rents are rising, and a disproportionate amount of rent burden. And, to really solve this kind of housing crisis, and these were dynamics before pandemic, right? So to try to solve such a housing crisis, is this is the role that, really HUD and the Boston Housing Authority, this is your guys' space to try to solve this and figure out what the dynamics are, but you have to have the tools. You guys have to have the vouchers. You need to be able to have full funding for what you're eligible for, more vouchers, just to be able to preserve what you have, to be able to recruit landlords in places of opportunity. I mean, there's so many pieces to this. And then also to be able to address the comprehensive wellness of the people you're serving. So you guys have a major task in front of you here. Just the commitment to affordable housing that you and your team and, the mayor's administration have been making is really commendable, because, it's a dynamic that a lot of cities really shy away from because they can't figure out how to solve it. And so they just kind of move along. But you guys, have been, creating new housing. You guys have been making substantial investments, and, your commitment to really the full community in Boston is what's needed to really make Boston a place that is not just for, those who are on that, far end of the spectrum when it comes to income and opportunity. So, what would you say if, you were talking to HUD and you were saying, these are the 3 areas that you need them to help the Boston Housing Authority? What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, I guess first, just to pick up on one of your other points in terms of the city, I do think that we have amazing city partners that really have tried to sort of address this affordable supply head on. And I'm always struck when I talk to colleagues around the country who are running housing authorities that are not at the table in their city administrations the way that we are here at BHA. I'm just very grateful for that. I think a lot of housing authorities struggle to be players at the table in the landscape of their city and state political landscape. And so, to the point of everything Boston has done, I think that the Housing Authority has really enjoyed a relationship with the city that has kept preservation of affordable housing at the forefront. I think in terms of what I would ask HUD for, I mean, I think first of all we just need more resources. We just, we are constrained in how we are able to preserve this critical asset. We have a $500,000 backlog of capital need here, and it grows every year. And so we are often forced to take obsolete housing and demolish it and build new housing, which is an extremely expensive model. If we could just invest in what we have in place and preserve it and bring it up to the standard that our residents deserve, that would be a far more economical approach. But public housing is not popular in its conventional form, and it has not been funded adequately for conventional maintenance and capital. So that would be my first, second, and third ask to HUD. I don't think that we need to take down all of these developments and rebuild them. I think many of them just need adequate ongoing investment. And they're viable communities, they're thriving communities in many ways, but they're deteriorated buildings that need investment.
So if you were going to summarize your vision for where you want to take the Boston Housing Authority over the next, 1 year, 5 year, where would you say your vision emphasis would be?
Well, I think there's a vision of bringing the BHA as an agency into a much more modern mode. And so a lot of my focus in the first year has been on not only, sort of the COVID situation and bringing needed investments to the properties, but also really addressing the need to upgrade our systems, get out of very bureaucratic and somewhat torturesome processes with our applicants and residents to get what they need, and to be much more flexible, innovative, and technologically current as an authority. And so, I think one piece of the vision is certainly to have the BHA operating as a modern company. And frankly, COVID has helped us with that. The pandemic has forced us to lurch forward in many ways that I think are going to serve us and our residents very well over time. I think another piece of the vision is securing preservation strategies for all of our properties. And we have many, many properties that have preservation plans that are underway, that are either kind of queued up or already in construction. But we have many properties that, as I've mentioned, in terms of the HUD question, really don't need anything transformative. They just need upgrading, and in some cases they need better maintenance. And so we're also working on that. And our operations team has been, really great at sort of redefining the way that it's doing its work and, kind of managing the day-to-day operations so that, when you walk into one of our sites, you don't feel like you're stepping back in time. My vision would be that you walk into a property and, you feel like you're walking into a living, breathing, viable, vital community.
Right, and that walk into the property, dynamic is something that the market rate and commercial space does so well. But from underfunding, it's been not a luxury that many of our communities have been able to also mimic and, best practice to. So, that leads to so many different things when you think of sense of place and community and pride and all, that for the residents and for really employees that are trying to manage that. So, that's a thing that I think are many communities who are built new are recognizing as they design them, but, going to try to preserve what we have and improve it, that's a whole nother dynamic to try to address. I'm sure your background as an urban planner, you've realized the link here on, having your residents walk in and, really have the look, the feel, the comfort, the security, and maybe even amenities that you would really want to provide in those properties.
Yeah, exactly. And all of those things that every other resident of the city has access to. I think there's a degree of isolation in some of our public housing communities, and we're really trying to sort of break that. And it takes all of those things. It takes good responsive management. It takes good neighbors and interested neighbors. It takes engagement, which is hard in COVID times. Some of our elderly disabled properties have community rooms where folks gather, and it's really a critical part of their day. But we've had to limit, that resource under COVID times, and hopefully we're now going to get into sort of reopening those spaces. But it takes service provision from nonprofits. It takes a lot of partners. It takes work with the police department so that our communities are safe and reliably policed. And so, I think we're it's a tall order, but we're always working across all of those fronts.
Well, Kate, thank you so much for sharing about what's happening in Boston and what your partnership with the city looks like, and all the redevelopment activities, and really what your vision is for Boston as you guys move forward affordable housing. So I appreciate the time, and you guys have a lot of work on your hands. So Godspeed to you and your team as you guys move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for raising up and lifting up this topic. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.